Good evening, everybody. Before we get started, Councilmember Joe Longoria is going to lead us in our invocation.
Let us pray. God of all things, we ask your blessings on our city, on our state, and on our country. We ask your blessings on our citizens and on our leaders. We ask you bestow your wisdom on all so that we can understand one another and work with one another to be understood. And we ask your special blessing on all of us who are assembled here today. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joe. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, February 6th, 2017 to order. Sudi, if you'll please call the roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the February 6, 2017 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that the individual has filed a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Luss.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morick.
Here.
For the record, Councilmember Bert Hewitt is absent, and Councilmember Karen Thurman is running late. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I want to welcome everybody here tonight. We appreciate you being here and look forward to any input and participation that you guys may have. Sudi, if you will please sound the next item.
Our next item this evening is approval of the meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 17035.
Okay, I would like to, we've got a nomination for the Milton Cultural Arts Committee, so I would like to move that up after the consent agenda from new business. Is there anything else, staff or council? No. Okay, ask for a motion on the agenda.
Mayor, I move we accept the agenda as modified just now by you.
Second.
Okay, got a motion from Councilmember Longoria, a second by Councilmember Morig. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Okay, next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinion on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussions on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of council in conversation. And when your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. And you'll have 5 minutes for remarks. Sudi, do we have public comment?
We do have one, sir, and that is from Mr. Sergey Zagriba.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. I've been here for last 2 council meetings speaking on...
Excuse me, just for the record, yeah.
My name is Sergey Zagreba, live on 647 Greencrest Lane, Milton. 30004.
Thank you.
I've been here in a couple last council meetings to speak about my concerns about expansion of a Morris Road, and attended last design board review meeting. But here, actually, I'm not here to come to every meeting to know you or to address concerns. As you were here to speak about two general public safety comments. Unfortunately, on December 31 last year, early in the morning, we have manhunt on the property. I mean, in the city of Milton. And it was a surprise to me because usually I don't work on Saturdays. Just happened to actually go to work that Saturday morning. Leaving my garage door just to run into policemen and realizing we have 6:25 in the morning, we already have manhunt in the city of Milton. Unfortunately, all news come to majority of citizens in my community either through Atlanta Journal-Constitution, either media sources, but not from the police department. It is my understanding after I talked to the police department at 12:45 that day that if we want to be notified, we have to register with the city of Milton to be notified. As a matter of public safety, maybe we can find a way, if new people move into the community, like I moved here a year ago, we found a way to welcome people, to say welcome to the city. Maybe as a matter of public safety, we can notify them that, hey, there is an option to register with the city of Milton and to be notified about any events like this. Unfortunately, we had a manhunt. By the time I get to the Deerfield Parkway, I already see our policemen with machine guns. So unfortunate things can happen. We cannot predict them, but if we have any police activity on the property in the community, it would be nice to send any text messages similar like Georgia sending Amber Alerts, saying please stay at home, load your guns, whatever it takes, because some folks were walking dogs, some people were taking kids somewhere. So I don't know what you guys can do. Maybe we can improve on that regard. Second comment was here in earlier January, just to get educated about our design process, design review process. And it's a general observation. We're a growing community. We position ourselves as a growing community. In that regard, it's quite obvious that the whole process of review of design is somewhat subjective. Maybe my opinion is biased as an engineering professional, but I think it makes sense if you guys consider to put on a design board. First, we need to define what design means in the first place. If it's architectural board, it's architectural board. But if it's design board, it means it's engineering board. And from my observation, there was little concern for public safety, health, environment. It was more concern about architectural things like colors, windows, window sizes, and stuff like this. So maybe my unfortunate situation where I end up with my house, partially attributed that people who are on the board, whether we lack in professional civil engineers on the board, we have really people who have more architectural experience on the board, but maybe you guys can consider to make that board more professional, to make sure that both ends cover architectural points as well as public health safety board. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and Happy New Year to you.
All right, thank you very much. Sudie, do we have any more public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay. Let's move on to the consent agenda, if you don't mind reading those items.
First item is approval of the following subdivision plat. Lucille F. Martin, land lots 692, 693, 748, and 749 Hopewell Road. Minor plat, create two lots, 4.540 total acres, 0.44 lots per acre. This is agenda item number 17036. Next is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Frontline Surveying and Mapping, Inc. for an updated boundary and topographic survey of the city property located at 13690 Alpharetta Highway. Agenda item number 17037. Our third and final consent agenda item this evening is approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Rupert Landscape, Inc. to install a 24-foot Patty Fay Deodar cedar at the Broadwell Pavilion. Agenda item number 17038.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion
Mayor,
to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as prepared by staff.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion. Councilmember Loss, second. Councilmember Kuntz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous, City. Okay. City, if you could please call the next item that we move from new business.
Next item is consideration of a resolution appointing a member to the City of Milton Cultural Arts Committee by appointing a member at large. Agenda item number 17042. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay. Tonight I'm honored. Bob Stewart is in our audience here, and I'm honored to have him as my appointee for the Cultural Arts Committee. Bob's lived in Milton since 2006, has been an active participant in the music and arts community. He's a former professional musician. Bob still performs with local artists when his schedule permits. He also owns and operates Sound Lab Music Studios, which is a 15,000 square foot music and arts facility, and serves the North Atlanta artist community by providing rehearsal, recording, video, talent, management, and event services. Sound Lab has been a filming location for multiple television shows and has provided music and arts consultation and event services for various North Atlanta municipalities. Bob also possesses a strong background in business and real estate finance. He has over 20 years of senior executive experience with Fortune 500 financial companies. He currently provides business consulting and real estate sales and advisory services as managing partner of Insight Performance Partners. With that, again, I'm very proud to nominate Bob Stewart as my appointee. So I'll open up and ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve Bob Stewart to the at-large position for the Milton Cultural Arts Committee.
Second the motion.
Okay, got a second from Councilmember Kuntz, or a motion from Councilmember Kuntz, second from Councilmember Lusk. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. Bob, if you'd step forward, and I will be honored to swear you in. So then everyone else can swear in. And if you would just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear and affirm
I do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
the Milton Cultural Arts Committee
the Milton Cultural Arts Committee
of the city,
of the city,
and that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
and I will support and defend the charter thereof,
as well as the Constitution
as well as the Constitution
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and of the United States of America.
and of the United States of America.
Thank you very much. If council wouldn't mind stepping forward, we'll take a picture. And again, I always say, you know, what really makes Milton special, and I think better than most cities, is the quality of our volunteers and all the work and effort and energy and passion they put to our city. So thank you again, as well as any other volunteers that are in here tonight. So we can just move it. Come on in, Karen. Just say you would have voted.
Okay.
Next items, reports and presentations. Sudi, if you'd please call those items.
This is a presentation regarding the installation of small cell infrastructure with a public right-of-way in the city of Milton. Ms. Brandy Crawford with Mobility LLC.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Okay. My name is Brandy Crawford. I first want to say thank you for giving us time on your agenda tonight. We know that you guys are busy, but we are happy to have the opportunity to present some information about our company, introduce ourselves, and also talk about the technology. Robert Norwood is also here. He's with Mobility. I focus more on permitting. Robert is government relations, but again, we're both happy to be here with you guys tonight. I'm assuming that, okay, maybe I'll turn this way a bit. So just to provide you a bit of background about the company. So Mobility has about 6 sort of operating units, I'll call them that. I focus exclusively on the small cell deployment, but we have also DAS systems, Wi-Fi systems over the country, communication towers, and also we provide co-location management and also transport connectivity. The primary driver behind this effort is data usage and data demand. So just to provide you with a few stats, most of us have a device, whether it's a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop, and all of those devices require data in order to operate sufficiently. So data consumption over the past 10 years has grown exponentially, but the system and capacity isn't quite there yet. So Mobility's plan and effort is to sort of bridge the gap between data demand and data capacity. So we own and operate all over the country, and we provide wireless infrastructure solutions that meet data demand needs that are in place today. We plan to finish this project in the next 18 months, year and a half, and we're doing the nationwide deployment of small cells in the right-of-way all over the country. The goal is to enhance data capacity and coverage in all 50 states. Mobility does have authorization to provide telecommunication services, and it's done with 3 different types of infrastructure. We have utility poles, we have light posts, and we have transport poles, and I'll get to those a little bit later to give you some details on the design, the height, and the look. So what is a transport network? A transport network essentially sends data from one location to another and essentially back to, or ultimately back to the internet or either your data center. So Mobility does this in 2 different ways. We have 2 types of poles. We have the transport pole and we have the small cell. The small cell is a bit shorter. The transport pole is a little bit taller, but the transport pole is a backhaul connection to the data center and the internet. As I mentioned before, we're doing this nationwide across all 50 states. And the goal is to really enhance data capacity because there's a true need for it. We install poles in the right-of-way. The installation is quick and it's clean. We can put up a pole in 1 to 2 days. It doesn't require trenching and digging like fiber networks to do, so we don't have to dig up the streets, the sidewalks, front or backyards. It creates market competition, which ultimately is going to help the consumers in the quality of services and also in the pricing. Because it's a slimline pole, utility pole, it's easily upgradable and adaptable when the technology changes, and it tends to do that, every year or so. And it also just creates connected communities. Our goal is to increase data capacity. Our goal is to meet the needs of consumers. And by creating or installing small cells in the right-of-way, you're putting infrastructure where the user is actually located and increasing capacity in that city or that community. So Mobility does have authorization to provide telecom services. In the state of Georgia, we were granted approval from the Public Service Commission, which allows us to place the poles in the right-of-way, but we do recognize that there are local ordinances and codes that are in place, and so we're here tonight to ask for your support for the installation of the sites that we've identified to date. You may also, so here is sort of a graphic of the actual network. So you'll see the 2 pole types. The taller pole in blue is the transport pole. You'll see some shorter poles in gray that are located near the transport poles. So the shorter poles, we call those small cells. The small cells speak directly to the transport pole, which is the blue one, and the transport pole is the backhaul connection to the data center or the internet. So the system was engineered in a way to place the poles strategically from one another so that there's true connectivity and they can sort of talk and speak to one another. If the poles can't talk and speak, then there's no connectivity. So we've engineered a plan for the city of Milton and identify a potential 7 sites. And I'll go through that list in a second, but I did want to show you just a graphic or a visual of how the actual design, how the network is designed and engineered. Yes.
So in your statement just a second ago, unless I misunderstood, you said that you could get these poles in place fairly quickly. There's no trenching, no digging, anything like that. For a transport pole, at least some of the transport poles have to be connected, right? They're
Sure.
not, it's not all radio or wireless. So in some cases, transport poles are going to be installed and there's going to be some digging or some kind of connectivity to the pole.
So the 7 sites we've identified for the city of Milton are the small cells. So the small cells don't require trenching for fiber.
Okay. Right.
So it's literally the pole that goes in the ground and we can put the pole in 1 to 2 days.
Right.
So these are the design types. So we can design the pole to look like your typical street light. They can just be the slimline utility pole, and then the larger image is of our transport pole. So you'll notice that all the poles have the antenna at the very top of it. The transport pole has the microwave, and the other smaller poles, the street light pole and the utility pole, have your radio and your UE relay that provides the connectivity. So we do have the option to design the pole to be a street light. It can just be your typical utility pole. The larger poles, the transport ones, we don't have those sites identified for the city of Milton. We only have the 7 small cell sites for Milton. So, why is any of this, important? What increased data capacity gets you is connectivity. Whether it's someone's home or a business, a small business, everyone needs to be connected. And this truly does help companies compete in the global economy. This helps hospitals, schools, universities all stay connected. And I did take a look at Milton's strategic plan, and you do have certain goals identified that speak to encouraging economic development and improving economic development. Lots of cities have recently embraced sort of the smart city concept. Some places have drilled down even further and have a smart corridor concept. So corridors in the city or jurisdiction where connectivity is not only there, right, but it is effective and it speaks to sort of citing your business on that particular corridor. So I'm sure the city of Milton, is thinking about that. I don't know if you have a smart city goal or concept, but having connectivity truly helps when you are looking to encourage economic development in your city. You may recall in November, and we do thank you for this, the city did pass a resolution that authorizes mobility to place poles in the right-of-way. It didn't approve any particular application, but just allowed our general usage of the right-of-way within the city of Milton. After that resolution was passed, I met with city staff and your outside counsel to come up with an appropriate design, a design that sort of meets your existing streetscape. And so what we came up with is a black steel pole that's 40 feet in height. So these are all the small cells, no transport poles. So the poles have the antenna at the very top of it. You'll see the UE relay and all the components that were outlined before. But we felt like this design was suitable here. I do want to say that we do like to match the existing poles in the right-of-way. What we don't like to do is create an anomaly. So if the poles in the right-of-way are all wooden poles, we can put a wooden pole in. If the poles in the right-of-way are black and steel, we have the option to design it so that it truly fits into the streetscape where it's going. But the 40-foot height is what we had discussed, and also the material, which is black, and the material is steel and it's painted black. This is site number 7. I mentioned we have 7 sites in the city of Milton. So the location of the pole in this photo simulation is not exact, and it won't be what we seek to permit, but I did want to give you a visual of what the black steel pole at 40 feet would look like. We do know that you guys prescribe to clear zone requirements, and the pole will have to be placed a certain distance from the edge of pavement, and we're willing to do that, place it behind the sidewalk, what have you. But I did just want to show you a visual of what the pole at that design would look like. So this is Morris Road near Deerfield, very close to here. And it does show you the 40-foot black steel pole.
Can I ask you a question on the poles? As far as safety, is there anything below that, that people walking by or kids or whatever, is there any access to anything, wiring or something that could be a safety issue?
So there is an electric panel. I can go back a few slides and show. So the electric panel is at the very bottom of the pole, but when I say bottom, so 6 feet off the ground is what I mean by bottom of the pole.
Okay. And here it's saying the distribution box is 13 feet, so.
Right.
Okay. But again, that would all be enclosed and
Yes.
not accessible.
So this map shows our proposed build-out plan. So we've identified 7 sites in the city of Milton. We try to avoid residential areas. We try to focus really on the commercial corridors because, again, this is about improving data capacity. The towers that you guys have up on private property probably do a really good job of handling talking and texting. These are really designed to, like I said, handle data, and we've really tried to focus on more commercial corridors so that the poles aren't intrusive and they're not very disruptive. So of the 7 sites, 3 are located within GDOT right-of-way. So we would have to coordinate with GDOT on the review of the 3 sites that are in red on the slide. Of the remaining 4 sites, I've submitted an application for number 7. It has not been approved. We're here to seek your guidance on the staff review, on the materials, on the height, and things of that nature. But the other 4 sites are listed there. The site number 2 is King Road near Cox Road. Site number 5 is Providence Road near Freemanville Road. And then site 6 is Bethany Road near Cogburn Road. The last one is very close to this building here. It's Morris Road near Deerfield. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I do want to, again, say thank you for giving us the time tonight.
Yeah, the only question I had was how many, is there a limit to the number of small cells that can be around a transport site?
Typically, the transport pole will have 3 to 4 small cells that sort of feed into it.
Okay.
But there isn't a maximum number. It's really based on the demand for data.
So the small cells that we have, are you saying will connect with the existing towers that are already in Milton, or do they have other transport cells that are outside of Milton that
That's a
will
good question.
connect?
So right now, we are permitting in 4 sites. So let me back up a little bit. So the transport poles have sort of a coverage radius of about 3 miles.
Okay.
The small cells about 1.5 miles. I'm sorry, a half mile to 1 mile, just depending on the built environment, the height of buildings that are around it. So we're permitting sort of all over Metro Atlanta. The poles themselves don't really care about jurisdictional boundaries, right? So a pole in Milton could
Sure.
connect to a pole in Roswell or Forsyth County or what have you.
Okay.
Anybody else any questions on that? Carter, Stacy, staff, this is a presentation right now, and I know we did an approval prior as far as, but now you're looking at the specific sites. What is required from the council?
So at this point, we just wanted Mobility to come forward and kind of present you with the overall plan that they had proposed, and see if you had any questions, see if you had any thoughts on the height and materials that we've proposed for the one tower that's been submitted over here on Morris at this point, and really just to get some general feedback. At this point, what they'll probably do is go back and make application for the 7 as a group, and I think as with Crown Castle, what we did before was we would bring that group forward for permitting under a resolution to mayor and council also. So,
Okay, it sounds like on some of the others, it's going to be just a monopole type, flat steel.
right, the 7 that are proposed so far are the small cell towers that were shown in that photo. Could you go back to that one photo,
Sure.
Randy? That photo right there. The black steel. I'm sorry.
No feedback on the Morris and Deerfield one, but has that been decided yet or not? Do you need feedback on that one?
So if you had any thoughts, so previously what was presented was a 70 to 75 foot
About 75
tall,
feet. It was
wooden
wood.
pole, which has been converted to this 40 foot, 42 foot tall, 43.9 metal black pole. Would be similar to the pole materials that we have on our tornado sirens. Just to give you an idea.
And as far as I know, one option was with the street light in that area. Would that help with safety or not, or sidewalks, or is that an option, or you know, is that our two options with the metal black pole or the streetlight type pole, or?
I think so. Brandy could probably speak to that a little bit better, but
Sure. So the pole design is flexible. We've done street lights all over the country. We can easily attach a light to it if that's the will of the body, sure.
And I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be or not. I just, you know, if that was a positive thing in well, any of the locations, but it sounds like you guys were wanting some feedback.
yeah.
Carter,
Some of the
there.
samples that we've seen that where streetlights it would not look like the streetlights that are out there. It would basically be a similar design with a streetlight attached to it. So it's not like it would disappear into the environment.
So would it look like it, in your opinion, would it disappear into the environment more so without a street light? I mean, I know
At
that.
night it would.
I know that's the obvious answer, but I'm kind of wondering if it was a street light, would it look like it was supposed to be a street light there? But I think what you're saying is it's not going to match.
Just
our
the ones that we've
typical.
seen, it wouldn't match exactly with the other poles that are out there along Morris.
I'm going to ask a kind of a pointed question, but you know, in other jurisdictions previously that you've installed these, and I know when you put it on impose it on a picture, you know, a lot of times it can look good or whatever. But you know, do you get much feedback from jurisdictions and citizens and all that they may be an eyesore or any issues like that? How prevalent is that?
I don't hear that issue a lot. What I do hear primarily is don't create an anomaly, right? So if the existing poles, and there are utility poles, you know, all over the country, if the existing ones are wood, match the wood. If the existing ones are your, you know, metal poles painted green, match that. So they typically want us to match the existing streetscape, and that's sort of why we came up with this design for Morris Road, because there are some metal poles out there. The pole color can be customized, and we can paint it any color, but we do like to match the existing streetscape, if you will.
Okay. Does council have any more input on that, Bill?
Yes. Do you have any installations in surrounding jurisdictions here?
We have poles installed in the city of Austell. We did installation there last week. We have poles installed all over the city of Atlanta. I can probably get you, if you want to look, maybe like a sample location list that I can maybe email to Carter. He can get to you if you guys want to just maybe take a look at some of the sites.
Sure.
But they are designed to be unnoticeable, if you will. I mean, the only reason I know that there are, you know, small cells, I mean, I tend, because of the work I do, to look up at every utility pole these days. I mean, but that's sort of the only reason you would know it's a small cell, because, you know, that antenna's at the very top of it.
And you know, I appreciate that. If you could send that to Carter, and then
Sure.
Carter, you can pass it on to us, and then
Yes, sir.
if one of our staff or council members doesn't look at something, they can share some pictures too. Okay. All right, anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, respectfully, I do have one public comment card on this
Okay.
item.
Okay, if it's okay with the council, I'll be glad to allow public comment after the fact on that. Okay.
Okay, and that public comment is from Mr. Sergey Zagriba.
With all due respect, it's not come as more a request.
So,
Where is
Sorry, I have to ask you
Sergey
again.
Zagriba, 647 Greengrass Lane,
Okay, thank you.
Milton. Considering you guys talking about placing a pole on the Morris Road, that's where I live. Is there any specific location? Can I find out where the pole will be placed on the Morris Road?
I know that, not that we're discussing back and forth,
Is
but
there
I
in
do
any-
believe that's on the presentation.
Is there
there,
any
the
in any
site.
proximity to our community, Deerfield Greens, or not?
Diagonal across and down past, across from the gas station.
Across from gas station. Okay.
Diagonal across from where you are.
Okay. What is unknown about this technology in the first place? And considering the community right across the street, I mean, maybe just need to ask people who operate in them, what the frequencies in the first place, what impact on the public health and long term? I mean, in general, towers, I mean, we need to look on multiple angles in terms of public safety and health as well. Because now we have expansion road of Van Morris Road. Now we're talking about putting a tower right there. And it's all tied together. We just passed the capital for expansion of the road. I'm still working with Mr. Carter Lucas to find out what alignment of the road gonna look like. Have no definite answer, so we need to look on the stormwater. We need to look on noise impact of expansion as well as this tower. So I just need to find out exactly where the tower is gonna be. And unfortunately, it's all come right across from me, so I would like to know more about this. So I don't know how you guys can pass it. I have more questions about health impact on people living across the street. So can we follow up on this somehow? Can we learn more about technology? Can we engage residents of the community? How do we go on about installing this tower and across the street you have $300,000 townhouses sitting? So we're gonna look on the poles, 75-foot poles. How does it impact value of the community or property? I mean, would you like to see 75-foot pole across from your window? I mean, it's something need to be considered and engage owners of the communities and maybe have a public hearing about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And what I'm going to suggest, Carter and Ms. Crawford, maybe if you guys wouldn't answer some questions to Sergio, if you know, even tonight or whatever, stepping out. Carter, you can certainly touch base and kind of connect, and then obviously that would be brought back to us, you know, as we discuss moving forward. So, all right, thank you. Okay, Sudi, if we'll move on to first presentations, if you'd please call first item.
Consideration of RC 17-01, text amendment to AG1 Agricultural District Development Standards in Section 64-416 of Chapter 64 of the Zoning Ordinance. This is agenda item number 17039.
Okay. I'll open up for a motion on this first presentation item.
Mayor, I'll approve that we approve the reading of the first presentation as read.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Kuntz, second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passed unanimous, Sudi. We can now move on to the public hearing. Sudi, if you'd please call that item.
Our public hearing is consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia, extending through May 2nd, 2017, an existing moratorium barring the acceptance of applications for permits authorizing the use of community sewage disposal systems. Agenda item number 17040. Mr. Paul Fricke.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a resolution that would extend a currently existing moratorium on acceptance of applications for permits, requests, or proposals for the development, use, or construction of community sewage disposal systems. The current moratorium expires February 7th, tomorrow. If we do not adopt an extension of the moratorium will expire by its own terms, effective tomorrow. The proposal before you is to extend it through May 2nd, 2017. And let me address something I discovered kind of as we sat here waiting for the meeting to start. On page 2 of the existing resolution, there are 2 references to certain contracts regarding getting technical assistance for guidelines for the community septic systems. And my when this was drafted, it was drafted as if those were to go forward. And my understanding is that did not go forward. Should the board or should the council decide not to or to enter into this extension, we would need to take those 2 paragraphs out and reflect what I understand the new intention of the council is to consider new language for section 50-184, which currently regulates these developments. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Open up for questions. Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
Okay. I'll close the public hearing part then and open up to any questions on this. Assuming, later in the meeting, assuming we extend this moratorium or not, if we did not, basically that would, in our existing ordinance, community septic would be allowed as far as community, technically correct.
That's right, under regulation of the state, not under local regulation.
Right, we would have the city would have no authority or whatever.
That's right.
The only thing that we do have, we have authority on the zoning and whatnot. So,
Correct.
It would theoretically, somebody could come in and do a development and get authority from the state to do community septic, but we would have the say-so as far as what the actual development is like, lot sizes and whatnot, AG1, if it's an AG1, that type of thing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on that? Joe?
So, that was a good point, Joe, because, obviously I don't believe our intent is to revert back to language that we had previously tried to protect based on the moratorium. So the question is, if we pass the extension, what's our target date for getting the language updated in the ordinance so that we don't have to operate under a moratorium?
I would say between 30 and 45 days.
Is that your last offer?
Which, if you don't mind me jumping in, I don't know if I'm on or not. What language are we working on now?
Well, if
we
you
may-
ask
we may-
me-
we may have to give direction on the language that we want to be working on as we move forward tonight.
We don't have, after the last meeting, obviously, we have no direction.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. We may have to, Joe, we may have to give direction
Well-
if we want anything to happen.
I'm confused with having direction. Because just because we didn't engage consultants doesn't mean we don't have a direction. We might not have a subject matter expert's opinion on something, but we have to have a direction,
Agreed.
okay? I thought the direction was to get the language updated so that we could exclude community septic from a residential use point of view, and we could allow it by permit from a commercial point of view. I thought that's the direction we were headed. Now, I could be wrong, it's just me, so I don't want to speak for everybody, but that's what I thought we had discussed. And that the whole purpose of the moratorium was to give us time to get the language updated and to potentially map out additional additions to our ordinances to govern the community septic use. Now, again, I've slept 150 times since we first started to talk about this, because I could be dreaming, but that's what I thought.
So I'm going to jump in, Carter, if you don't mind. Sure. I agree with everything you said, though I don't recall exactly what the last direction, whether it was including it for residential and not including for residential and allowing it for commercial. But had that even been the case, we don't have the internal expertise to be able to develop regulation standards, the legal background that we'll need, who's going to be trustees of this type of system, even if it comes in entirely in more of a commercial environment. While we could easily ask the attorneys to write up a change for that section of the law, we're still going to be in a position where we don't have the regulatory ability.
Well, we don't. There is regulations governing community septic systems. It's just that they're not done at a city level because we don't have an ordinance for it, right?
Well, that's right.
The state and the county
now it's the
would
state.
have jurisdiction, correct?
But we as a city will have absolutely no regulatory
No, I get that.
authority and
Other than having to provide the permit to allow them to actually develop a site that has a community septic system, right?
But there will be no fallback position if the system goes defunct, if there's no whatever the controlling authority
Right,
is.
which is the whole purpose behind us just allowing it for use in a commercial capacity and not residential, because the number of worries grows exponentially in terms of a residential use as opposed to a commercial use.
Can I step in too? And Joe, I think you're right that we talked about that when we talked about going forward or not with the contracts and the studies. But I don't think we haven't given specific direction to our legal or our staff of the direction we want to go in order to. So I believe that's the reason the whole the moratorium is there until that's defined. If we fall back right now, it's still open game, so to speak.
Well,
correct?
I didn't think we shut off, the lights on, which way we were going when we didn't approve the expense of $20,000 for a consultant. That's not really the way it was presented to us. You didn't say, unless you approve this, we won't know where we're going.
Well, I think the intent.
Obviously, I'm saying stuff that you guys don't necessarily agree with because I'm getting those really good looks from you, but I apologize, and I'll let somebody else speak.
Yes, anybody else have Matt?
So if I'm right, our action at the last meeting, if we do not continue this extension, we're basically right back where we were in January of 2016, where we still have the law that allows people to do community septic with nothing to regulate it locally at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
So basically, we're right back in time, but now we're caught in a circular transition to catch-22, where we have a resolution here that was supposed to allow for the expertise to create those resolutions. That was that gap that we had to fill that gap. And right now, if we extend this thing, then the language we would have to do is to either remove those parts of the code that say that we would have to have that regulations, or we would just extend the moratorium without stating we'll do anything. Is that basically it? So we can have this thing continuing on as an extension without any action by this council saying we'll have everything fixed by the time this thing is done, right?
Well, the moratorium anticipates that we, of course, will do something.
Which is undefined right now. Right?
I will say that the moratorium itself does not have to have necessarily a specific end goal, but it should address the fact that we're working on a revision that is consistent with the council's vision or something to that effect.
Right, legally, we can't just say, let's just keep a moratorium and internet. Karen?
It's my understanding that the moratorium is going to give us time to change the current ordinance, which is very vague, open-ended, and not at all specific. I would like to see us put together an ordinance that doesn't necessarily have all the specifics, but it doesn't have all the answers, but it knows which questions to ask, so that if anyone comes in for a commercial permit for a community septic, we know, these are the things that they need to spend the money to present to us, that we knew the questions that we want to have answered to do it, rather than us answering and them coming in with maybe something a little different because everything has changed in a year's time or whatever. But I think we ought to be able to put together an ordinance that asks the questions that we would have to have answered for somebody coming in requesting a commercial community septic permit.
And I think to Councilmember Thurman's point, that should be fairly easy, just like any other zoning or project comes to us, say a commercial one that is anticipating that. Obviously, before we, we'll have an ordinance, but before we approve it, they will have to answer all the latest and greatest hurdles, engineering techniques, and whatnot. So I don't think that would be that hard to do. But Joe,
I think Rick ready to go.
Bill Grace before I did. So, well, I guess I'm trying to understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish, because we voted last week on were we going to expend some funds to try to get more technical data to see whether or not it would work, whether it was in commercial. That's what at least my concern was, this may be a tool we'll use for commercial. What are we giving direction to staff to actually come up with in absence of having technical data or understanding what is capable?
I would say, and again, anybody step in if I'm wrong, right now, the moratorium, the moratorium, the item we're talking about is an extension or not of a moratorium. But the second question, the deeper issue,
What are we
question is,
doing during that moratorium?
do we want, if we extend this moratorium or not, we probably need to give staff some direction so that if we extend it for X number of days, the time it expires, we will have an ordinance before us that, the council would.
Yes, and
a proposed ordinance.
Right, and the way it's written, it's currently extended through May 2nd or the adoption of an ordinance that would amend 50-184.
Joe, and then I think Bill.
Whichever shorter.
So if we change the current ordinance to not allow for the use of community septic at all, and I'm just building on what Karen was saying a moment ago, and that way we don't have to have a moratorium in place, because it seems a little silly that we just keep moratoriums, going on and on and on ad infinitum. So let's just take community septic off the table, and if we want to consider allowing it, then we can go back in, and we've got all the time we want to figure out how we want to craft the community septic option for either commercial or residential or both or none.
This one whereas clause that Paul referred to, whereas the city ratified contracts with Dr. Robert Rubin and the University of Georgia Research Foundation on 30th of January to provide technical assistance and recommendations for the development of review guidelines for the use of community septic systems within the city. Could you be more specific, Carter, what that included? And is that part and parcel of what we're trying to accomplish during this moratorium period?
I don't know if I can be more specific than that or not.
Well,
the idea was that they would provide the technical expertise to be able to put together what type of information we would need either in the design process, the implementation process, or the long-term maintenance process of these types of facilities, and what types of land uses they would be acceptable for use on, whether that was mixed use, commercial only, just based on their previous expertise. So their intent was to look at our current regulations and look at the state regulations and try and fill in the gaps of the state regulations where they believed the municipality may want more control over the design, construction, and inspection process than what existed under the current state process.
So maybe to address Karen's comments here, kind of a Q&A or an FAQ sheet that we'd have here in the permitting department. Dr. Rubin and UGA folks would be working on those points that would be applicable to securing a permit. And that's also the direction that we're headed during this moratorium period. Am I reading that right?
Based on tonight's conversation, I believe that you are.
So we nixed, last week, we nixed those two proposals then that would have helped us achieve to get through this moratorium period.
I believe that's correct.
Since this resolution makes reference to those proposals, I would just deduce from the fact that they are referenced in this resolution that that was part of the process that we're going to go through in order to perfect whatever we're trying to perfect here and to get us out of this moratorium period. Did I make it more complex than what it is?
I believe what you said is correct. The
Depending on the
resolution that-
direction, correct? Depending on the direction that the city
Right.
wants to move in. Could be correct or not,
I
depending
mean,
on.
at the time the resolution was written, it had anticipated that those two contracts would be ratified and allow us to move forward with the development of those design guidelines.
Yeah, that's safe to say.
So I guess the question is, in order to get through this moratorium period and to put an end to it, if we're going to extend it, then we need to adopt those proposals that we denied last week.
Yes and no. It depends on what direction you as a council want to go in. If you want to continue consideration of any community septic in the city of Milton, whether it be commercial, residential, or a mix of the two, we're going to need some more technical assistance. If you're not looking to utilize community septic systems in the city of Milton, then last week's decision was the right one. We're not going to expend any more funds on it. So I think we're pretty much we're at a decision point.
Joe?
So, Paul, is there a difference between not having a moratorium in place and having an ordinance that says something is not allowed versus having an ordinance that says something is allowed but having a moratorium in place?
I mean, there is a technical difference. As a practical matter, you won't be getting, in this case, the community septic permit. Someone could file a permit and it be denied because they're not allowed by the ordinance. With a moratorium in place, they can't even file it. I mean, that's a technical difference.
All right.
But the impact would still be the same.
And going back to the discussion in previous, before Joe's comment, I'd like to see, ask if there's a direction we can go where, basically we did not approve those two contracts last time. And, if we do extend this moratorium, but have the direction where is there an option to change our ordinance to where we do not allow community septic? The talk is maybe, what I'm hearing from the council is maybe specifically residential, but then, allowing, as Councilmember Thurman said, an opportunity at some point we could go back if it looks like the development pattern in our commercial areas that are already zoned and on comp plan for commercial or mixed use, that we could, get some more information from one of the consultants that would be current information at that point, because it may be 2, 3, 4 years down the road, maybe a year down the road. Would that be an option and a way to craft this? Or did I muddy it up?
I mean, it can be crafted many ways.
Yeah. Karen?
I'll be honest with you, I did not support spending $20,000 of city funds with the two consultants to give us information. I felt like it was a conservation subdivision ordinance all over again, where you've got people that are an expertise in their fields. Their job is to promote their expertise in those fields, and so of course they're going to come up with, what they promote. And I just felt like that in our situation, with the technology changing the way it is, we have no applications, I don't believe, before us right now for any kind of community septic system, do we? Are there any?
No, but we've been in a
There's a
moratorium,
moratorium in
so.
place.
Yeah.
it would
But
prevent them.
have we had anyone that's even asked if they're, expressed an interest in it recently?
There has been some discussion in the 140 corridor.
Okay. But, to me, I really think we just need to decide what it is, the information that we would want to have from somebody presenting that concept, and look at it on a case-by-case basis, rather than, having an expert come in that is very, very knowledgeable in the field, but their job is to promote their field. And I really felt like we were getting ourselves right back into what we got into with the conservation subdivision ordinance, and that was a painful process, and I really didn't want to go through that again.
I guess to, kind of take it one step forward, and what I said a minute ago was, my thoughts are, if the council wants to, if we do extend this moratorium, but then direct staff to write the ordinance disallowing community septic in Milton, But, you know, if the council wants to in a mixed use or commercial, so, you know, disallow it in a residential type application, allow it potentially in a mixed use or commercial application on the 140 corridor, but then at that point, and like, you know, Karen said, times change and technology changes, but put that onus on the property owner, the developer that's doing that, to come back and bring their engineering studies. And at that time, the council can choose, if it looks like, you know, some of that's going to be viable, council can choose to hire a consultant to represent the city on that. Is that a possibility, or is that a process? Or Rick?
Yeah, I guess the question I had, just trying to understand if the direction is we're saying we don't, if we're talking about in commercial, which is commercial corridor, which is one of the things that I was in favor of taking a look to see, is it even feasible with the topography and the stuff in the corridors that we have? But absent of that, can staff actually give us some safeguards if we during this time frame, let's say, what can you do without having a consultant or have somebody give you information? Can you put parameters, Paul, that would help us protect like we originally were trying to do if someone did come forward? Because without that being in the ordinance, is it wide open? Is it just default back to Fulton County or the state as far as what the legal requirements are?
And if I followed, if there is a provision which would allow it, and we do not have our own particular requirements, yes, it would fall back to any minimum state requirements, wherever it might be allowed.
So I guess the question is, if that's what I'm hearing, the direction we want to go is to have more parameters, I guess I go back to staff and say, are you going to be able to craft something that's going to protect us so it doesn't just default back to what the state is?
Or could, and let me add to that, Rick, if you don't mind, or could the ordinance be written where, you know, let's say it disallows community septic in a residential area, but allows for the potential option in a commercial or mixed use, but would have to be approved on a case-by-case basis by the city?
There are certainly, in the zoning context, there are use permit type of provisions which are generally case by case, subject to certain measurement standard. Or
I would support
Okay.
that.
Yeah, just, you know, again, wouldn't want to put just something blanket, hey, it is allowed or it is not allowed, and then
Right.
somebody comes in with something that really didn't make sense or work. So. But Matt, something?
So I got to take the opposite extreme from what Karen said, all due respect. But, you know, on principle, I don't think it's a good idea to have technology removed from our process, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, whatever, to achieve our objectives. And we're doing that if we don't allow for residential on this process. You know, I believe we have more subdivisions going in that could have had less asphalt, saved more trees, more contiguous green space, more trail systems, and it's happening more and more all the time. There's also a company out there called BCR that many of you don't know about, but they actually have technology that allows for sewage to go through a system and it comes out as dirt on the other end and clean. You know, this is the type of technology that exists, that is out there, and if we don't have this technical expertise to come in here and tell us everything we need to know, as well as the opportunity to do this in conjunction with how land trust works and things like that, and include those in the ordinance also, then we're shutting ourselves down to some of the things we put in the 2011 2030 comprehensive plan that we have. So it's got to be said that I don't think on principle that we should limit ourselves on technology on any part of the city of Milton, but I think it's worthwhile that we go back, if we are going to pass this thing, to go back and reintroduce the same things we denied last week, to get that technical expertise, allow them to show us what is, and at that point the council body can look at the ordinance as a whole and decide if we want to keep it all, cut some, cut all, cut what we want to cut. But if we don't have that technical expertise to know it all, you know, if we're going to be blind to what that technology can do for us in all aspects of the community, I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice. So I think we should pass this as it currently is, but also bring back the very things that we denied last week.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Just one last comment. The only question I've got is realistically, let's say we talk about putting a construct in there that would say we'll consider it when it comes forward as a use permit. From a timing standpoint, when that gets into a cycle before you guys, does that give us enough time to actually then gather technical expertise after somebody's done an application? That's my concern, is if you wait until you get an application, then we're starting the whole process over, trying to figure out, well, what's even out there, what would work or what wouldn't work. That would be my concern by not doing any type of, if we're going to allow this, not doing any type of data research. I don't know. I'll ask staff, would you be able to analyze that and tell us what system they would need to do? Let's say it's in a commercial corridor, effectively.
Well, I think what we would do is the ordinance would not allow community septic except through the use of a special use permit.
Okay.
And by requiring that special use permit, it would give us the opportunity to review those systems as they come in. What's nice going into those is to be able to give the applicant some guidelines as to what you're expecting in that process. But it doesn't preclude us from looking at them on a case-by-case basis as they come in and evaluating whatever type of technology that they may propose.
So theoretically, someone comes in with a special use permit request. What's the timeline for us to do that analysis?
I don't know that I could even tell you that. It would depend on the types of systems that were proposed and the types of expertise that we had on contract at that given time.
Let me ask you a question to go along with that. And Paul Legal, I'm assuming that we could, instead of having a specific timeline, we could ask the questions and they'd have to provide the information, and that use permit process would be, if it takes 3 months, it's 3 months. If it's 6 months, 6 months, 2 months, 2 months. Is that, are we flexible enough on that we could require their presentation or them to get the answers that we need or enough data? And then again, it may not be what you need, but you have to say, okay, we're going to defer this again until we.
Yeah.
Here's my, and I respect everybody's opinion on this and the technology, and that all makes sense, but what I don't want to see is that technology leads our development, or it leads us in our path. I don't want to get all the information and then everybody jumps to that and says that's the path we want to go. I've said 1,000,000 times we can put a man on the moon. If we decide as the council and the city to approve a certain type of development, and it depends on community septic, I can guarantee you within 3 months, 6 months, whatever a reasonable time is, we can find engineers, it can be designed and it can be done to work right. Again, if we get all those answers right now, to Karen's point, it may not, 2 years from now, there may be a total different system. 3 years, 4 years, you just never know. Bill, and then Rick.
I support what you're saying there, to the extent that I think what we were trying to achieve with those 2 contracts last week was to come up with some general guidelines. I don't believe that Dr. Rubin was getting into specific designs of any particular system, albeit technology changes over the course of time, but the particular guidelines for evaluating the applicability of any particular system out there pretty much stays the same. It's just an engineering process. You're looking at soils, you're looking at daily loads, BOD loads, types of waste, whether it contains heavy metals, chemicals, or whatever. There are certain guidelines established in that industry, and I think it's only reasonable to address Karen's point again, is if we are going to allow it, let's set up some general criteria. Let's quit kicking this can down the road, so to speak.
Rick, yes,
I guess that's where, Paul, that's where I was trying to get to, is in the process, can we slow it down? Will the process in a use permit request, do we have the flexibility if a citizen or a property owner comes forward and requests to say this is going to take 3 to 6 months for us to approve this this special use permit? That's,
Yep.
I guess, the question I'm getting at.
Sure, and that's what I was hearing just recently. Unless our ordinance says otherwise, that sort of time frame isn't a problem. If the ordinance has a certain said you must have a hearing within 90 days, then that will be your limit. I'm not aware of that being in there. So, if it drags out 2 years, we may have to talk about whether de facto we have created a ban on it without intending to. But
I think we have history too, where we've had applications that have come in and either the applicant or staff has recommended deferring because need more time to get more information. But to your point, you don't want to lead people on a goose chase for 2 years, and we've got to be able to do that. If there's nobody else, this is coming back up in new business. So, we've closed the public hearing. We don't have any items on our zoning agenda, so or unfinished business. So, Sudi, if you'll please call the next item.
The next item is consideration of a resolution of the City of Milton, Georgia, extending through May 2nd, 2017, an existing moratorium barring the acceptance of applications for permits authorizing the use of community sewage disposal systems. Agenda item number 17040. We held the public hearing today, February 6th. Mr. Paul Fricke.
now, the only thing I would add is just a reminder that we will need to remove the two whereas, the second and third whereas clauses on page 2, as they don't reflect what happened at the last meeting. We can add another one in to reflect what the intention of the board would be, or the council would be, in extending this moratorium. Otherwise, the rest of the moratorium, as it stands, is before you.
Okay. In general, what I would like to see in a motion, and based on partly my position, but also and I know the council's somewhat divided, but what I'm hearing, so I'll throw it out there, is that if we are to extend this moratorium for a certain period, we also give staff direction, and my direction would be, as far as the ordinance, we do not allow, we'll go ahead and put it to bed, we do not allow community septic in a residential application, and that by a special use, some kind of special use permit, it could be considered in a commercial mixed use type application. So that's fairly simple. So I don't know how you could word it and all that in the direction. But again, that's my position. So I'll certainly open it up to anybody else. Joe?
So what we have to do right now is extend the moratorium. We don't have to craft language for the ordinance, but, and I don't think we have any options, because the worst thing we could do is just let this lapse and then it's the wild, wild west. So I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item number 17040 with the language changed to exclude those options that we didn't enact last week.
Do we
Okay,
need another paragraph in there stating what we want staff to do?
Yeah, I think we've got to give some direction to staff.
I mean, I can
And
do
again,
it with a broad statement that they're going to address Section 50-184 or address that. You can give them as much or as you feel necessary.
All right, so there's no second yet, so I can change.
Yeah, we don't have a second yet, and maybe some other discussion too.
Okay, with the additional direction to staff, that would exclude the use of, that would change our existing ordinances in such a way as to exclude community septic for residential purposes and allow or consider the option for community septic from a commercial point of view with an approval process that would allow us to ascertain the design, feasibility, applicability, technology, all the ologies and isms thrown in there from the applicant at that point in time.
I'll second that.
Okay, hold on one second. I've got a motion by Councilmember Longoria. Not sure. Can we capture that? The intent there?
I will say,
We'll get a second and go
for
with
purposes of this extension and in a whereas clause, I just basically need to reflect that the staff is going to be working on a revision. The exact details of what that revision aren't necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah. and
They need it
to
in
that
order to
point,
move
does-
forward.
We'll take it.
Does okay, staff knows this, or the gist of this motion. It can move forward. Karen, you have
I
a
second
second?
it. I second
Okay,
it.
we've got a
So we
second,
can
but then we
discuss
may
it.
have some discussion here. Bill?
We had talked about adopting these systems through a special use permit. Do you want to include that, or is it presumed that that's?
Well, I think
how
that's,
it's
I thought that's what I said.
I would anticipate that's how the language would come out.
Yeah, I think okay. Any other? Matt?
And the only thing I'm going to say is I don't think it goes far enough because of the reality of what's happening in the northern end of the city, and I think we need to use all of the tools we can to help save the land that we have. So I will not vote for that motion, out of all due respect.
Okay. Absolutely. All right, I have a motion and a second as read from Councilmember Longoria, second by Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Have one opposed and what is it, 5 of 4 suited. You have that? Okay, council, our staff, that gives you a direction
Clear.
to bring back to us. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Sudi, what do we have next? Sudi, if you would, please call the next item.
Next
Subdivision
item
plats.
is consideration of the following subdivision plat. Woodwinds at New Providence, Phase 2, land lots 850, 851, 878, and 879, New Providence Road. Final plat, create 23 lots, 34.262 total acres, 0.67 lots per acre. Agenda item number 17041. Ms. Kathy Field.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'd like to introduce to you Melissa Brannon. Melissa is our new staff member, and she will be working on the review of our plats as they come through. So she is prepared tonight to give you a presentation on this subdivision plat and to answer any questions you may have. Melissa.
First, I'd like to say welcome, Melissa.
Thank you
for
so
being here.
much. I'm happy to be here.
Good.
All right, let's see what do we have. Okay, as Sudi mentioned, we're going to be going over Woodwinds at New Providence. This is going to be Phase 2. It's located off New Providence Road. It's a final plat to create 23 lots. And the acreage is 34.262 acres for a density of 0.67 lots per acre. This is the site location map. It's right off of New Providence, just north of Cooper Sandy Creek. This is going to be east of Phase 1. The other phase of the subdivision actually has a parcel in between, so the two phases are not touching each other. So Phase 1 is just west of the highlighted portion that you see there, which we're looking at Phase 2 today. So as we said, we're creating 23 lots. These are the OCS structures. We're going to have 3 detention ponds on the property. This is the western portion of the subdivision. As you can see, the entrance is off New Providence there. That's the only entrance. No site distance issues here that we've found. There's 1 detention pond on this western portion. And this is the eastern portion, which also contains 2 other detention ponds, 2 creeks that feed into Cooper Sandy Creek, and no amenity area in this. There's just a mail kiosk in that central part there. And it's pretty much a straightforward plat. Do you, any questions?
Karen and then Matt.
Yeah, my only question is, that parcel, I believe, has got some real topographical challenges. It's very steep in areas and stuff. How would our steep slope ordinance, that I know we're still working on, how would that affect this plat?
Well, actually, Mark and I were talking about this earlier today. We're hoping that it will go through to kind of limit some developments like this in the future. But as for now, the steep slopes are going to not really allow for the residents to have any pools in their backyards. There are some definite topo challenges to contend with. The developer has squeezed in as many lots as I think they can, and just working with the topo, but we're looking forward to the steep slopes ordinance, hoping that it would limit some of these funky lots that you see here.
So I guess we need to try to get that steep slope ordinance done as quickly as possible in order to avoid this kind of.
Right, and as a final plat, this was obviously submitted well before our discussion on the steep slopes ordinance, and we'll be going to Planning Commission here later this month and then back to you with that in March.
Are we sure all of these lots are actually buildable lots?
They are under our current ordinances, yes.
And also to that point, and I'm just going to make this assumption, but you know, since they are average considerably well over 1 acre, I'm going to assume that they do have a lot of issues that made them the reason why they are over an acre with the topography on that area and whatnot. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Melissa. I'll open up for motion on that item. Bill?
Mayor, I'll move to approve agenda item number 17-041.
Second.
Okay, got a motion for approval from Councilmember Lusk, second from Councilmember Morgan. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous, Sudi. Okay, we'll move on to reports. Anyone on council have anything they want to report on? Okay, I'll move on to staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a quick update on a couple of projects. As I'm sure you all are aware, the Heritage Walk is under full construction at this point. The actual Heritage Walk component of that project is scheduled to be open this summer with a final completion with the intersection improvements at the main intersection in Crabapple also completed hopefully by the end of the year, weather pending. So that project is moving forward. Also give you a quick update on our Public Works work order software system. We're wrapping up the implementation of that system. Included in that is a citizens app that will allow an easy identification of work orders, either from the Public Works perspective, the park perspective, or from code enforcement. Will allow someone just to take a quick picture and send that into our main system, which will get it to the right people to make sure action is taken on that item, and it'll also allow them to have updates on that item as it progresses through our system so that they can see when those and how those issues are taken care of. Our Mayfield Road sidewalk project is still moving forward. We're waiting for authorization from GDOT to release that for construction. Typically that's a 90-day process, and I believe we're about 60 days into that. So we're hoping in the next 30 to 45 days we'll be able to release that for construction. We're looking at a joint project with the City of Alpharetta on that one, where they are looking at Charlotte sidewalks from the Charlotte portion back towards Freemanville Road. And then our portion would be that streetscape from Charlotte to the main intersection in Crabapple.
Have we taken bids on that project?
We have not. So until we're released for construction after our right-of-way certification, we can't release that for bid because it's a federally funded project. So
it's another 30 days after that.
Right. So we're hoping to be able to release that. I think our time frame is up in about 30 days on that. So hopefully we'll get that out here in the next month or two. And I think that's all of our major projects that are going on right now. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Rick?
Just a quick question on the Bethany Bend short-term improvements. Do we have anything identified to do there?
We have, and we've been working through with GDOT on our signal permit to try and get that done. I was hoping to be able to give you an update on that project tonight too, but have not heard back from the status on that from GDOT yet.
And if we did want to try to, I think what we've talked about before, you've said that right now, separate from the McGinnis Ferry Georgia 400 off-ramp, on-ramp, that area, Bethany Bend improvements are not considered part of that. GDOT is tying it to, well, the new realignment is going to be tied to the widening of Highway 9.
The realignment of the intersection at Bethany Bend?
Right.
Yes, sir. The final solution will be tied to the widening of Highway 9.
Okay. But we're looking at short-term improvements.
We are looking at some short-term signal improvements and safety improvements at the intersection, and GDOT is funding those entirely at this point, so they're working through their own permitting and procurement process to make that happen.
Okay.
Bill, and then that.
Maybe further to that project, the one realignment on the east side of 9 to Bethany, I believe the Pikes facility is going to be, or will abut that revised alignment there.
Yes, sir.
How will is Pike going to be obligated to do any of that work when they're developing that parcel?
They're accounting for that work, but they're not necessarily doing any of that work.
Okay.
So the right-of-way that's necessary to make that realignment happen with the driveway across from Publix is being included in the plans so that there won't be any necessary relocation necessary when the intersection improvement comes in.
Good.
All right, Matt, sorry.
Yeah, real quick. The Birmingham Hopewell roundabout, since it's been going great from what I've seen. Early, since it was in there, there were some people that had some questions on accidents and things like that. I hadn't seen any. I just didn't know if we had an accident report since it's been open.
I'm not aware of any since the one or two at the very beginning.
And that's all I know.
Yeah, I'm not, since we've had the actual masonry in there, I don't think we've had any. Nothing strikes me.
I don't think
No pun intended.
All right.
Well, if that's the case, obviously, just great job. I mean, that was a lot of work, and there were a lot of complaints up there at the beginning. I know, Steve, you drove around many times in that thing to figure that out, but
He finally figured out how to do it.
it works out well. It works out well.
Keep
So.
going in circles
They
till
don't
you
have
decide
that.
where you want to go out.
They don't have those up north, no, I'm kidding.
And we are working with our new service provider to do some additional landscaping in that roundabout and along the Hopewell House. So we're working with them now on that plan and procurement. So hopefully you'll be seeing that in the next month or two also.
Okay, thank you, Carter.
Thank you.
All right, what do we got next? Fire?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The updates I'm going to provide tonight in my report are going to be tied to the initiatives within my strategic plan. The first one, several months ago, we were approached by AFCEMA, the Atlanta Fulton County Emergency Management Agency, about installing a weather bug in the city of Milton. And the weather bug is an automated weather station. And the system will be the northernmost in Fulton County and will allow us to differentiate between weather and differentiate weather for our citizens, more accurately assess the threat of severe thunderstorms, lightning, tornadoes, snow, ice, and fire weather, so the danger of drought and all that. Information for these automated weather stations is updated every 30 seconds and shared with the Georgia Emergency Management Agency, the National Weather Service, the Department of Homeland Security, as well as local public safety and healthcare partners, dependent upon the system and updating the weather information, which plays a critical role in hazardous material responses. The National Weather Service office in Peachtree City can also access the data in these stations, and then they can perform their role of developing long-range plume models. They are currently using the lightning data from various other stations to fine-tune their models regarding intensity of severe thunderstorm cells. This will also help the county, state, and federal agencies create a more accurate map of weather patterns in the metropolitan Atlanta area. One of the great things about this weather station that they want to put up at Fire Station 43 is it's going to be right here in the city of Milton, and it doesn't cost us a thing. They're going to install this thing. It's about less than $12,000 for the weather station itself. The installation is free. So next week we are going to on Wednesday we have an installation meeting with AFCEMA to see how we're going to install this weather station and how quickly we can get it up and running for the community. One of the nice things as well is the WeatherBug app is accessible by anybody's smartphone. So the residents can pull it up and actually get up-to-date weather information right away. So I think it's just another great reflection of the partnership that we have with FSEMA and them coming to us and asking us if we'd like to have that in Milton. The next closest one is in the Crabapple area. So we will have the city pretty well covered from north to south and getting good information there on the weather. So I think it's a great asset for the city and the citizens. So. One of the other things is our wellness program, another initiative. The fire department recently completed our annual physicals. The program consisted of CBC, TB test, stress test, strength, and agility test, and a physical exam by a physician. I'm happy to report that all our firefighters passed, and they're all fit for duty. The other initiative we have is our barn safety program. Our goal is to increase fire safety knowledge within the equestrian community. Barn safety will include identifying and eliminating hazards to life and property both in and around barns. We'll be using social media and the city webpage to advertise the program, and we also hope to meet and partner with the new equestrian committee that's been developed. And finally, our EMS response plan for city parks. The department is working on developing a plan for each park and enhance the training that we have for coaches such as CPR and AED. Currently, it's my understanding they do not receive that training, so it's our goal to participate in that and work with. We met with Jim Craig last week and come up with a plan, and we're working on that now so we can enhance some of those, the capabilities there out from the department to the coaches out in the fields. So, and that is my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Questions? I have a question off subject, but really we're trying to fire, police, public safety, and really Shannon's not here, but just based on some public comment we've got tonight, do we have any kind of, does our system pick up if there? Obviously we've got the warnings with tornadoes and things like that go out to folks that are, tied in on their phones and emails and
Code red.
Code red. Is that tied to? Again, I guess it's an unfair question to ask fire because other than a natural disaster, emergent weather, something like that, I wonder if that, with the whole weather bug thing, would that be tied in to where our citizens would get notice on that are subscribed?
And Steve, I think the question is with the situation where there was some fugitives in the area in Forsyth County, were our citizens alerted via code red at that time when that happened? That's just something I didn't know. I didn't think about it until it was brought up, but I wanted to just ask that question.
Yeah, on the police.
So they were alerted.
Okay.
I didn't like what they were alerted with, but they were alerted.
Good.
There are other mechanisms we should be using to be able to get that information out. Some of the things that both police and communications are working on right now are making sure we have easy and constant contact with all of the, whether they're HOAs or other types of groups in the event that someone hasn't subscribed to our app. Not only that, I mean, we could also be doing it face-to-face, and those are good ways to be able to accomplish those tasks because not everybody's plugged in. One of the other things we're working on, kind of a little bit tangential to what you're talking about, is we're working on a plan right now to be able to engage some of our more at-risk, at-needs citizens in the event that we have any sort of catastrophe or weather event or anything like that. This way we can go out and engage them, make sure they're okay in the event we have like wires down or an ice storm or if it's something like that. So we're trying to make sure that we're hitting everybody where they are with this type of information. So I guess a long answer to a short question. We do have the capability. I just don't know that we're fully leveraging it.
I would just ask if you guys will look. It sounds like you're working on it, but look into it. And even as a comment was brought up tonight, maybe we could reach out more to some new folks. If there's a trigger mechanism when somebody moves here, with the tax bill or something, or change of name, that we reach out to them. So, okay. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, you're up.
Steve, if I may ask, could you pass these out, please? Good evening, everyone. A couple of activities going on in the Parks and Recreation Department, also associated with our strategic plan. We're currently evaluating proposals that we have received, requests for qualifications. This is for the new update to the City of Milton Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as well as to create a master plan specifically for Providence Park. So that process is happening right now. Another activity that's going on, the IGAs with the Fulton County School. We submitted these response to Fulton County's proposal back to them, and we're currently waiting their responses from their attorneys. From a program perspective, we are just getting started up with boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, and baseball. We are winding down. This is the month of championship games in basketball. The girls' numbers are consistent with what they were last spring. Boys lacrosse is reporting an increase of another 20%. Baseball is reporting an increase of another 30%. So it's starting to grow. I'm going to give you just a quick update on the new playground at Broadwell. We got the facility up. There was a punch list. The majority of the punch list was finished last week. There's more landscaping activity that has to come, but we expect that facility to be completed before the end of this month. And then the final item I have tonight, some of you may recognize this was a proposal, this was a presentation that I gave during the workshop in January, and that resulted in the request from council that we take this to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. What I have done is, in preparation for the PRAB meeting, I've updated it. Unfortunately, I had to go past my personal policy of no more than 10 pages on a PowerPoint, but it was there was some feedback that was received from the members of the Parks and Recreation Board to get a little more in-depth. In the interest of being expedient, I'd just simply like to point out a couple of things. On page 5, I incorrectly reported the top 10 activities, missing our basketball program. It is in the top 5. These are programs where we have Milton residents participating in Alpharetta programming. We have identified a total of 4 activities, 4 programs, that we offer comparable programs here in the city of Milton, and we also have included in the MOU. And that would be baseball, football, basketball, and lacrosse. So I updated that to make my information correct. Also, in response to information received, I added on page 6 and 7 an actual bar graph and then the text interpretation of the bar graph, because some of the bars are quite small. But what it shows is the representation of Milton residents in our programs, Alpharetta residents in our programs, other residents, other communities, and then the same for Alpharetta residents in an Alpharetta program, Milton residents in an Alpharetta program, and other residents in an Alpharetta program. So you see how these things, where we have competitive offerings, how it makes up. And then I got to thinking, and I put together a what if. And if you look at page 9, this is strictly a what if. Just something I thought you might want to see. What you see on the left is the actual payment calculation we did this past December. And then I said, what if we took out those 4 programs where we compete with Alpharetta? And that was the only change we made. Might want to make others, but this is just a simple what if. And what you see is there's a difference there of over $70,000 in which we would have saved if we were not subsidizing Milton residents going to Alpharetta programs where we offer competitive type programs. And then I also added some pages on utilization. Yes, sir.
Jim, that's a really good point. Can you tell me, do we have a program, or I'm sorry, does Alpharetta offer a program that the city of Milton does not offer today?
Yeah, they offer girls softball.
Yeah.
Does Alpharetta offer a program? I think I didn't hear you correctly. Could you please restate?
What? So,
I apologize.
yeah, I apologize. Originally, we put the whole program in place because we didn't have any.
All we had was boys baseball at the time. Correct.
And we've come a long way since then.
Yes, we have.
You know,
Yes, we have.
you guys have been working on this for quite some time. So I was just wondering what the gap looks like between what the city of Milton offers versus what our citizens are having to seek somewhere else?
Well, of course, there's all the activities that are associated with pools and community centers, as well as the senior centers. But in other team sports, we actually had a representative from the Alpharetta Youth Softball Association, the girls softball. We don't offer anything for girls softball here. And at the meeting that we had, the special called Parks and Rec Board meeting, where this was presented, that gentleman came there and said, you know, this is a case where the MOU is benefiting. It's working for the citizens of Milton because Milton cannot offer a girls softball program. And it's working for their program because it allows the program to be fulfilled. And otherwise would have hurt that probably about 100 to 120 Milton residents participating in a program that we don't have. There are other programs, offerings, classes and art classes, things like that. But in terms of youth sports, that's the big gap we have right now. There's also teenage and adult sports, such as basketball and adult softball, that we don't offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen?
In these summer camps and instructional programming, because those are the two largest other than the senior programming, where
Yes.
we have Milton residents participate, are there any of those camps that we can now offer? Or any of the instructional programming that we can, I mean, I just hate paying Alpharetta 1.5 times what it might cost us to do it
Right.
ourselves.
Right.
I mean,
We're paying our competition.
yeah, yeah. It just seems like some of those programs we could now do ourselves.
Well, the biggest camp that we offer is Camp Joyful Souls, and that's one where we work in coordination with Alpharetta. They offer a camp for special needs children, and they take it up to age 12, and then we offer a camp for special needs teenagers starting at age 13 up to age 22. So that's the biggest camp offering we have right now. We have attempted for the last 2 years to run several camps out of the Bethwell Community Center, and the lack of facilities there has made the camps unsuccessful.
Anybody else?
Okay?
Joe and then Bill?
No, I'm just saying, we need to revisit this whole
Yeah.
thing at some point. So we don't need to
Yeah.
talk about it right now.
I can tell you this, the Parks and Rec Board had a absolutely fantastic meeting a week ago Thursday. We had representatives from all of our major programs here, as well as, again, Alpharetta Youth Softball. They used it as an opportunity, replicating, if you will, a workshop, just asking a lot of questions. They did not come to any conclusions. They will be meeting again at their regularly scheduled meeting on February 16th, I believe. And I believe what may come out of that meeting is some recommendations to you folks with regard to the issue of the MOU and also the rental policies. Because we listened intensely to each of our program partners talking about renting out fields and facilities where they're trying to grow programs. So I think if you talk with your Parks and Rec representative, you'll get some feedback, and I expect that as a group you'll get some feedback in the next 2 weeks. I hope to be back here at the March workshop to be able to present those findings to you.
Okay, that sounds good. We look forward to seeing that. Anything else, Bill?
Just quickly, Jim, I know we've just opened Providence Park. Are there any programs that we're doing or that we could be doing over there? At this point in time, and the second part of the question is what you foresee happening over there once we start developing?
Well, it's a good question. That's one of the reasons we're currently working on getting a consultant on board to help us with a master plan for the park. At this time, we don't have any source of water. We have a porta potty, and I've been reluctant to try and get any programming there until we get some guidance on what the community wants at that park.
Okay. Anything else?
Well,
Karen?
I think getting guidance from what the community wants is very important, but I think we need to be careful how we get that guidance. We need to get that guidance from the community at large rather than just a few people who attend a meeting.
Oh, I fully agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I am hoping that in this process we will be able to once again get more comprehensive survey of what the community is looking for. That's one of the reasons we're tying an overall update of the master plan for the whole city along with a master plan for the park.
Okay. All right, anything else, Jim?
No, that's all good. Thank you.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor,
Motion
can I
to
just-
move.
one last
Steve,
time?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it's a quick one, and it's good.
Just wanted to throw out a reminder on February 17th at 11 a.m. We're going to have our Arbor Day celebration at the Broadwell Pavilion, and in this case, our Arbor Day tree will be the 24-foot tall deodar cedar that we'll be planting there, so hopefully a little bit more exciting than
That's
smaller
the
trees. will be.
17th?
It is Friday the 17th, yes, ma'am, at 11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Okay,
Thank you.
exciting. All right, do I have a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?